listening to the Barcode Podcast with your host, Chris Glandon, serving cybersecurity straight up with no chaser. Let's hit the bar and grab a drink.
What's up, Tony? Thought you got off at 9 tonight.
I did, man, but my damn Ferrari, it won't start.
Wait, you on empty, bro?
Nah, man. Full tank, ready to go. Damn, imagine it's been misfiring, so I knew something was coming.
Damn, and I thought this car was invincible.
For what I paid for it, it should be.
Well, it sounds like it could be your fuel injector. Lucky for you, though, I got a guy on his way here right now that's going to be able to help you out. He definitely has what it takes to help you get started and run smoothly.
I bet. Well, while we wait, let's go inside. I'll make us a drink real quick. All right, Chris, buckle up. I'm going to make you a sidecar, the high-octane version. You add 2 ounces of bourbon, 1 ounce lemon juice, and 3/4 ounce simple syrup. Now, we're going to put half of an egg white into a cocktail shaker. Now, we're going to shake it real light for about 30 seconds and then fill about halfway with ice. This time, you're going to shake it real well and then strain it into a new glass with rocks.
That's got some legit power right there.
Hey, man, I think your buddy just walked in.
That's him. Time to get this thing started.
Okay, Chris. Well, I'll see you all next round. Oh, wait. What about my car?
Joe Schorr is the Cybersecurity and Risk Services Executive at LogicGate. He is equipped with over 2 decades of experience in leading strategic business development and constructing new sales and delivery engagement models. His in-depth knowledge of cybersecurity risk, together with supplementary skills of being able to translate end user requirements into product solutions that address client pain points, extend his professional offering. Having expertise in this field also allows him to provide mentorship and advice to startups, which is what I'd like to focus on today. Joe, thanks for joining me and welcome to Barcode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So you've been in the cybersecurity field for many, many years, and I'm sure have seen product solutions fail or alternatively thrive in what has become a crowded space in terms of cybersecurity tool sets. I'm curious, from your experience, what common traits have you seen from those who have succeeded that should be mimicked by those aspiring to differentiate themselves in the product space?
You know, honestly, talk about real estate, people say location. In cybersecurity or even the software industry, I swear it's just timing, a lot of it. I mean, I work for a company that sells a SaaS GRC solution. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and 15, 20 years ago, we were banging around pretty much doing GRC-ish stuff. And we knew some people that came up with some pretty cool solutions. But at the time, it probably was a fantastic way of doing things, but the market wasn't ready for it. There was really no one to sell it to. It was like you had to wait for there to be a professional class of CISOs out there, or chief risk officers or chief privacy officers. Like there's a really tiny subset of people that understood what you're trying to do. So everything was very kind of craftsman-like, and it was like you're selling to your peers. There wasn't a big total addressable market like there is now. So I think a lot of the stuff we're seeing kind of hit their stride and, quote, get successful. A lot of times it's the second generation of some of these ideas. It's kind of funny. I mean, there were things that looked a lot like some of the advanced endpoint protection things years ago. There was things that probably addressed APT type attacks before there was a FireEye, but FireEye hit right at the perfect time. So honestly, I think a lot of it's timing. You can actually be too early to market, but things move so fast that you could almost kind of slow your roll, wait for the market to catch up with you or you to catch the market or whatever it may be, and then go back and pound that nail again and see if it works the second time.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I'm curious about the precursor to that. So from taking only a vision or an idea and then applying an action to it to really get the gears turning, what would you say is the first step for that individual who may not have capital built up or money in the bank, but has a solid idea?
You know, I think it's becoming more and more apparent. And the more you read founder stories and things like that as the years go by, the ones that really stick and the ones that get traction and the ones that really get money thrown at them as opposed to pursuing it. And again, it sounds like stupid common sense, but it's the people that had customers right from the outset. It's the ones that got commitment from, a CISO at a top 20 insurance firm, or that CISO knows what they're doing for a living and flat out says to them, you know what, if you could take this and go make this an application, I'd buy it tomorrow,
Gotcha.
And I mean, I've had conversations like that with some C-level and board level people where they've said, if somebody can do this for me, here's my cell phone number. You could call me tomorrow and we'll buy it. That's the people that get off the ground quick. Whenever you talk to seed investors or anybody, everybody's got great ideas. And it's a cliche again, but it's kind of like, if you've thought of it, somebody else probably did already anyhow. So let's pretend, 6 different groups of people out there all came up with the same great idea in the same 1-year time period. Whoever has legit customers willing to pay for that, no matter what stage they're at, they're going to win the fight. Somebody else may get lucky and stumble into a seed investor, an angel, or a VC firm that's trying to load some cash. But in general, it's going to be the one that's got paying customers, sitting there cash in hand, like buyers ready to go.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So say that there's a student working part-time in cybersecurity, say in a SOC, and conceptually, they've developed this cure for stopping ransomware. The end of the plague is here, right? How would they legitimately go about pitching that with little experience in the field, potentially 0 contacts? How do you prove yourself and be taken seriously in that type of situation?
It is tough, especially it used to be the classic story was, Gates was a programmer and he took this big thing nobody wanted and got, stinking filthy rich from it and everything else. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, there are a lot of people with ideas and they're not coder. I'm not a coder or programmer, app developer, never have been. But I think we're at a unique time in history where with the development of all the no code or low code things, a lot of what's going on in the startup world is people are really just coming up with a really good, for lack of a better term, like a storybook. The way you'd pitch like a Hollywood film. Here's the introduction, here's this. And there've always been pitch decks when you're trying to get money. This is kind of a little bit beyond that. It's sort of the difference between, or it's the bridge between having your pitch and actually having like a minimum viable product where you might need developers or might need something to show, but that enhanced outline of where the inputs really go, what's really being done in your secret sauce in the middle, what it's going to look like, the output and reports in a dashboard or portal or whatever, what that user experience will look like is really important. But again, you have to tie in there where the revenues get come from. I had heard a great quote a couple of weeks ago. It's not real politically correct, but it's interesting. It's like, I've changed the words a little bit, but they basically say, there's a lot of investors out right now. There's a lot of cash and they're not necessarily as smart as they used to be, maybe. And this came from a really big time PE type of person. So they said they really, a lot of times may not understand your greatest new mousetrap, but they understand revenue and they want to see exactly where that revenue is coming from. So in a lot of weird ways, that person, it may not be a developer. They might have a good business head on their shoulders. And that part of it may be easy for them. They may realize, I work in a SOC. I've got this great idea. And I know I've got these 5 clients that I work on every day on my red light, green light screens that have this exact issue. So and you know what? They're all Fortune 100 companies. So there's my total addressable market. And I could put that on, slide number 4, talk about the market is this big. And if for some reason, in the course of my work every day, I get to, I'm always talking to the incident response person at this place, or the CISO, if it's a kind of a smaller IT staff or whatever. I've got people I could bounce this idea off of. So that becomes kind of testimonial things she can use, And then you talk about, I know that they're, like you said, DLP, I know they're paying this much for DLP now. We're managing it for X amount of dollars per month, annual recurring revenue, everything else. I'm going to build this that takes care of 10 times as many things, and it's going to cost half as much. So I'm going to build the silver bullet, charge half what they're paying already for this protection measure, and here's how it's going to work. No matter how good they are at coding, once they start talking about money or revenue, they're ahead of the game.
Right.
The inverse is true. They can be a great application developer, build a great app, and if they can't talk about where the revenue stream is, they're just dead in the water.
I love that you say that, because there is no barrier to creating an idea, or there is no prerequisite to designing some type of concept. So I think it is a matter of just knowing how to prove value.
Oh, yeah.
So say someone is able to prove value, right? Now the idea has legs. What's the next move? Are programs like, Y Combinator a viable option? Or, what would you say is the next logical move for them?
That's a common scenario, man. Let's face it. Yeah. So, Y Combinator is like an animal unto itself now. It's so big that it's almost like if you get in it, you're almost guaranteed like you'll be the next hotness. And there's a bunch of other ones like the Y Combinator. I personally think that a lot of the local incubators are pretty good. I live in the Tampa Bay Metro. So we have a few here. There's a Florida Founders, Tampa Bay Wave. I could sort of think of 5 off the top of my head, which probably means there's like 25 or 30.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best low budget or no budget way to go. I mean, just kind of start talking to those kinds of people and see what money might be involved. I know some of them they're like ridiculously cheap. So if it's you and 2 of your friends that are sharing an apartment together and you're coding and eating pizza, like if you're that,
yeah,
you can go to these places and, for couple $100 a month, you theoretically are getting office space and you get like a address, and maybe they help you get a website. So and you're getting access to a lot of pretty high end thought leadership and people trying to help you out. That's the cool thing. The good thing, especially in cyber, the industry is now roughly 20, 25 years old where it's really taken off. So now you've got people that made a lot of money over the past 20 years. They're done. The Ron Goulas of the world. Now they're out. They've started their own, they're either angel funders or they start a VC or they're doing like a nonprofit type of VC type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're helping the younger generation figure out what the next big thing will be. And a lot of them are pretty cheap. Some of them do require pretty heavy time commitment, sometimes financial commitment. There's all different flavors of them. The one that I work with a lot is Dreamit. So Dreamit does an interesting thing. It was tougher in the COVID time, but they do these things called sprints. So you literally go on a road show and you're hitting a whole bunch of companies all at once with your idea, like customer companies. And these client companies are just very innovative type of places where they want the, fire hour CrowdStrike when it's 5 people working on it. They want it to be the first in the door. So they introduce you to all these people in a kind of a blitz. And you come out of there and in theory, after a month of doing this, you've got maybe 5 or 6 or 10 clients signed up, for proof of concepts. And like I said, that's in a lot of cases, that's really all you need to get off and running for the money, people.
Yeah, it's like speed dating. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
And the connections you make, right? Like getting those intros and networking with industry professionals is critical.
Israel's got just an enormously vibrant cybersecurity startup scene. And I'm convinced a lot of it is because it's physically like a small area. Like everybody's very, very condensed, which in one hand you think, oh my God, there's so much competition. But by the same token, there's a lot of competition, but it's a tiny, tiny little area with lots of really smart cyber people. And they're looking at the whole world as their market. So it's not like they're all competing for business in Israel. That's not that much. But they look at it as we're all going to help each other out. We're pouring money into each other, and we're going to use all of our connections and networks and get into get into the States, get into EMEA, get into the Middle East and Asia Pac, and go around the world. So in a way, that Israeli cyber scene is like one big incubator. It's powerful.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed, but never realized why. So that definitely makes sense now. Yeah,
they have a great. I mean, you'll see a lot of them. A lot of the founders. It's a funny combination. It'll be a combination of sort of, not middle age, but like career government people or military people, combined with like a 24-year-old mathematician PhD that's like an AI or machine learning genius, and they're teamed up together to come out with some kind of AI-driven, endpoint detection tool or something. It's amazing.
It is amazing. So as you see these startups forming, what have you seen personally that causes them to fail or just fade off into the distance? Is it bad ideas, lack of funding? What have you seen that causes them to fall short?
I think there's of course, I can never remember the name of the author when I'm on the spot. I think it's called Bridging the Chasm, Bridging the Gap, Jumping the Gap, something. It deals with the whole software development cycle or software startup cycle where it looks like a typical bell curve, and the first 10-ish% of who you're selling to in your market are these early innovative people. The ones that'll host, a Dream It sprint. I'm at, I don't know, I'm the CISO of Coca-Cola or General Motors or someplace, and I'm gonna have 5 startups come in here next week, and they're all gonna pitch me on what they do, and we may adopt that and bring it into our internal labs and use it. Those are the innovative companies, and they could be little, they could be big, but there's only so many of them. Mm-hmm. So once you sell that early adopter innovative group, which is normally the founders of a company, the people that become the C-suite, they're doing one-on-one selling through relationship selling. And they may even have a relatively small direct sales force. They might have 5, 10, 20, 50 salespeople out there pounding the pavement. But they can only get to that kind of first group of early adopters because those are the ones that are looking for a very specific set of features and benefits that they're sold on. They've got a niche requirement. This software application or piece of hardware, whatever, meets it perfectly. But to get to that next big group on the arc, which is like 85% of the market, that's where and there's a gap between it. Everybody sort of peaks off right there. And that's where I wound up talking to a lot of startups at that stage. So they've been in business for a year or two. They'll have, 20, 25 customers. They sell a couple $1 million a year. And they're just sort of like, what do we do now? Like, why can't we get over there across the chasm? Like, what the hell's the secret? And honestly, what I find a lot of times is sort of what I'm doing for a living now, which is the partnership and channel and alliance area, where if you've got a software application or a hardware device or something, and you're, use my company as an example, LogicGate. So we do GRC and integrated risk management. We do that, and we're great at it. And I think we have the best product on the market. But what we're doing now is growing our relationship with consulting firms and resellers and people like that, people that are building up in our channel that are risk experts. And they're in this huge, huge, huge market doing big risk transformation exercises. So you can only get so far with that better mousetrap you've built. At some point, you need to you need to enter a bigger conversation, because you've run out of the people that just need a mousetrap. Now they need, mousetraps that they can use in a 500 house development, that are all centrally controlled and, can be remotely deployed, or you can monitor if they've been tripped or not. Like, there's a whole different world out there that your product can't do by itself, but you can probably do it with partners who can now introduce you to all those other clients.
Yeah, I think integration capability with other products in the security stack is important as well. And
it's a two-way street. It's not like, it's funny because channel used to have kind of bad connotations. It was, sellers selling to other salespeople and everybody trying to get their cut. And you're not referring as much business to me as I refer to you. I think it's matured well past that now. It's more like, in the services industry, you're having a really, really consultative sale. So in essence, you're selling the concept and a program and some projects, and then you're going back and filling in like, well, what products and services and hardware and software, what's appropriate for what we're trying to do. So now you're trying to get yourself plugged into that bigger picture instead of before you're just like, we want you to sell our stuff. How many do you need?
Exactly. So let me ask you this. What solution don't you see in the market? What doesn't exist? Or what do you see coming down the pipeline?
I don't think it's as much a solution as a market. I really think the small, medium business market has been completely, I'm generalizing, it's my own opinion, but I think it's been almost completely ignored by our industry forever. Everybody's concerned with enterprise sales, selling to the enterprise, making it big. They all want to sell to Coca-Cola. And, if you're in Atlanta, you're selling to Coca-Cola and Home Depot and a couple other people, you're not worrying about the business that's under $1 billion. And I've said for ages that the best market out there to work in, and the one that desperately needs help, and the one no one's addressing, is the one where, the company may be worth $500 million or even $1 billion, but they only have 2 or 3 or 10 people working in IT. They may have one person that calls themselves a security person.
Yeah.
So they desperately need help, and they don't have time to figure all this stuff out. And they have a lot of money. It's not a single standalone flower shop. Like, it's a decent sized business, but a lot of them fall into the SMB market. And I strangely, everything's context. Like, I work for a company that we deal with compliance a lot, but this is one place where I think compliance can actually help. And that's because there's a new thing out now, CMMC, which is the standard that anybody dealing with the Department of Defense is going to have to be CMMC compliant. So the analogy I always use is you could be a 3-person paint manufacturer in Dayton, Ohio, that makes a very specific type of paint that goes on pencils that are sold to, the Department of the Army. You have to be CMMC compliant. And now those people are going to get attention from our industry probably for the first time.
Yeah.
So a lot of the services firms out there are running full speed, trying to figure out how they can address CMMC compliance.
Yeah, I've seen it.
That's one very specific market that's out there. But what I'm hoping is that the things that drive that CMMC stuff might trickle out into the other small, medium businesses that are out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Security teams within SMBs have very limited resources.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody wants to land Citibank, but Citibank has more security people than most of the security companies I've worked for know. They really do. They have an army of people there, and they literally buy every single product that comes to market. They just stick it in their lab, but they're going to have a copy of everything on the earth, and they figure out pretty much on their own what is going to go into their architecture. Yeah. But how can a company that's worth 0.5 of a percentage point of that compete with that, because they just don't get the attention.
Okay. So fact or fiction, should SMBs be less concerned about security because attackers aren't targeting them?
No, that's the horrible part about it. I used to, back when the target attack was one of the most over talked about attacks I've ever run into, and probably the most demoralizing case of FUD I've ever seen in our industry. Like, it was disgraceful what our people were doing. Like, cybersecurity companies are out there just, well, look what happened to Target. So point of sale systems were, vilified. Everything went crazy. But what kind of got thrown out in the wash a bit was the fact that it was a heating and air conditioning company in Pittsburgh is actually who got hit. That's who started the whole spiral fracture chain of failure that happened there. And I'm still convinced, almost no matter what Target did, if you've got a vendor connected that's that one leak in the chain or link in the chain, then it's a really cliche thing to say, but the chain's only as strong as its weakest link. And if you've got these small businesses connected to you that aren't being attended to properly, that's your perimeter right there. So I don't know. I mean, I've always been somebody that pays an enormous amount of attention to vendor risk and third-party risk. I'm talking like going back to the 90s. So it's always near and dear to my heart, but that's where that small business thing always comes to mind to me immediately. Because anytime some big company talks about how secure they are, or all the measures they have in place, and I always think to my head, well, I wonder how the guy that's, exterminating for ants in the basement invoices you guys. Like, what's that portal look like?
That's a great example. Yeah.
They need to, and it's not an easy question, because it's, in theory, the small businesses need as much stuff or services or protection as a big one does.
Yeah. That's a great point. You're at the mercy of anyone within the supply chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, that's why I've always been disappointed SMB didn't get addressed better these past couple of decades. And again, I could, when we were talking about vendor risk, I kept harping on it back then. I really thought vendor risk was going to be a thing that got SMB more attention, especially after Target, but it really didn't. Everybody has SMB parts of their company, or most of them do, but it's usually like a sales function. It's really not, they really don't craft solutions and craft the products designed for a small market, licensing, all of it. Right. It's usually like a one-off. And human nature being what it is, I think a lot of companies, they avoid it. If you're a seller, I mean, if you look at sales, and startups will go through this, you hire a direct sales force. It's typically you're selling to smaller companies, but then your drive is always trying to get a bigger sale. So promotion progression in companies is you start off, on the phone doing inbound, outbound sales. Then you're promoted to small, medium. Then you're promoted to mid-market. Then you're promoted to enterprise. Then you go to named accounts. So it's almost seen as in the sales cycle as that's the lower end sale. It shouldn't be.
And what about the infrastructure cost for that solution provider to stand up a SaaS environment? Because that, is going to reflect in the cost of a service.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. At face value, it seems like SaaS would have solved it too, because you think, well, now, we're not babysitting servers and hardware and, huge electric bills, keeping things cold, and cable farms and everything else. But you're right. I mean, having to pay Amazon or Microsoft or Google for that slice of disk space gets expensive too. So just the cost of, roughly the cost of data is so high now that the people that get the break are the bigger ones, because it's a volume discount. So it's inversely punishing. If you're small, you're paying a lot more for data than somebody that's really big.
And with SMBs, you have to look at enterprise solutions, because, the alternative to that is low cost or open source solutions that have no support. So I just don't like seeing SMBs sacrifice security because of cost.
Yeah. And I did that I was a CIO of a nonprofit for about 5 or 6 years. And I was in that exact trap. I mean, I literally had hardly any budget at all. So at the time, I remember really well, we were buying Astaro firewalls, which were it was freeware at the time. I mean, they had a paid version, but we were doing the freeware. And I was lucky. Like I had somebody that worked for me that was like an Astaro whiz. And then when they became a paid thing, we got a sweetheart deal. We're able to buy them pretty cheap. But I remember very, very well having to run super lean and shore up our defenses with open source and freeware and shareware. It's tough. And again, if you're going to go down that route, you're probably going to need some decent brain power. Like I had a guy. It's not like the big boys. You just go get a maintenance contract with Cisco or something. You're in there all hours a day and night trying to keep things up.
So you mentioned LogicGate. Would you mind telling us about that for a moment?
LogicGate is it's a software as a service. It's built on the graph database. It's like low code, no code. It's really easy to use. If you look at it, it's doing GRC and compliance on something that looks a lot like Visio. You're able to drag and drop things in. Connections are made behind the scenes. We've got like every framework on the planet Earth is you can pull that into it and do almost anything you need to do, anything you can dream up. But what we don't do is offer it as a managed service. So that's where the partnership thing comes in quite a bit. And again, in the industry's defense, one of the biggest things that our partners anyway, and I like to think we have like really good, solid, innovative, forward-looking partners. Most of them are challenging us and helping us figure out ways for them to offer things like GRC as a service or managed assurance, managed compliance, managed risk, whatever they're branding it with. And I think that is in the industry, the sub-industry I'm in, which is governance, risk, compliance, integrated risk management, all those type of things. I think that's probably a coming trend, again, for the stuff we've been talking about, because not everybody's got a compliance officer. Not everybody's got, you may be beholden to DP requirements in Europe, but you don't have a privacy officer to figure out what the hell that means. But you might have a budget to do some services, and you've got, you're already doing some of your stuff outsourced to your SIM or, management and monitoring of different devices and things. So now you start to wonder, well, why can't we have managed compliance? And, between clients and partners, we're being pushed in that direction. But like no more than, like Alien Vault or ArcSafe back in the day or Splunk, like they're not offering their own management. Everything gets done through like really good partners. That's where LogicGate will be. We have some amazing risk people in house. We recruit pretty heavily from the consulting industry. So we've got a lot of risk brain power, but it's geared towards kind of crafting out solution and provisioning things and getting it implemented. It's not around how you're going to manage it after we leave or what the other 20 risk projects you have going on entail or how to hook them in. So again, partnerships are critical, absolutely critical.
Yeah. And with all the new state and local regulatory requirements, how difficult is that to keep up with?
It's tough. And the good thing is once they're codified, we can get them into our system. So we can, quite literally, if a framework or methodology or something pops up and we don't have it, or a client requests or a partner says, you guys got to do this now. It's a pretty trivial matter. We can get it done pretty easily as long as the stuff is literally down on paper. What's tough is predicting or trying to allocate where we're really going to put our full force to bear. So we can support all these different frameworks and methodologies and stuff, but it's like anything else. Some of them, vulnerability management or third-party risk management, CMMC, once it is really hitting the ground running, and GDPR and all these different ones. What we're trying to do is figure out the ones that we put extra development time and extra effort into. Like it's like any other market development. What do people really want really badly? So we're trying to always ascertain, we'll cover everything at the base level. So we can get it in there. You can ingest things But the ones where we really are working on automating and linking these frameworks together so you can duplicate information across different things. That's where a lot of our roadmap development comes from. So like right now, we've greatly accelerated. We had vulnerability management, but now we have vulnerability management in conjunction with Tenable. So, you've got the best vulnerability scanner out there. So we have all that enrichment coming into our vulnerability management now. Third-party risk, we're working with Security Scorecard and Black Kite. Again, we were doing third-party, but now it's that much richer because of all the content that they bring in. So that's where a lot of our kind of resource allocation internally is geared towards.
That's awesome. So, Joe, you mentioned you're down in the Tampa metro area. Are there any cool bars or speakeasies down there that we should all be aware of?
So I told you, I grew up in Delaware County and outside Philly. And my favorite bar at home was a place called the Stanley Cup on Baltimore Pike in Springfield. And I've never found, in my worldwide travels, never found any place that could, no place could beat your living room. And that place is like my living room. But I always go to Irish bars when I travel, trying to just, if there's such a thing as a connoisseur of Irish bars, I like to think I am. So when I moved to Tampa like 25 years ago, I swear to God, it was the last place on earth I expected to find even an adequate Irish bar. It's hot as hell. Everything's tiki bars and Jimmy Buffett, and Hawaiian shirts. There's a place in Tampa called Four Green Fields, which I swear is the best Irish bar on earth. It has a thatched roof, and I'm going to mess it all up, but I think they talk about how it's one of like 2 or 3 authentic thatch roof buildings in the United States, like Irish thatch roofs.
Nice.
It's absolutely outstanding. Great bar.
This is in Tampa?
Yeah, Four Green Fields.
Okay.
Fantastic. And then super duper tourist trappy. There's probably my favorite place right now is a little bar called JD's, which is pretty much a locals bar on Indian Rocks Beach.
Okay.
And it's right behind, there's a huge tourist trap, Krabby Bill's, really touristy, but like a quarter of a block behind it. Like,
okay,
you walk 50 feet behind it, you've got this place, JD's. It's just a rockin' fun bar. Tampa City, Four Green Fields, on the beach, JD's.
Good to know. Okay, well, I just heard last call here. So you got time for one more?
Yeah, man.
Cool. If you opened a cybersecurity themed bar, what would the name be and what would your signature drink be called?
Oh, it would be Hacker Schorr, after Hacker Schorr beer in Germany.
Yes.
PSCHORR. And the original Schorr was named Joseph Schorr, which I researched.
Really?
So probably have to be Hacker Schorr it would be Hacker Schorr beer on tap and then Bullet Old Fashions, I would have to say. I love them. There's a Bullet only bar in St. Thomas. Again, a weird place to get a whiskey drink, but might be the best old fashioned I ever had.
Nice, man. Well, listen, Joe, thanks for joining me today. Where can our listeners find you online? Probably LinkedIn is the easiest. Okay. Shoot me an email, joe.schorr, SCHORR @logicgate.com. Excellent. Thanks again. I really appreciate it. Take care, man. You too, Chris. Thanks a million.
Hey, yo, Chris, can I get a ride?
Barcode patrons, if you like this episode and would like to support the podcast, rate us on Apple Podcasts and visit our Patreon site, patreon.com/barcode podcast. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, check out the barcodepodcast.com/sponsor. Cheers.
Unfortunately, it's time to shut the bar down for this episode. Thanks for stopping in. See you next time. We'll save you a seat. Be sure to check us out at thebarcodepodcast.com.